Hello everyone, this is Andrew from Crown Academy of English. Today we are doing a lesson about the word would, and we're going to look at the form, use and meaning. So would is a modal verb. Here is the pronunciation, would. And in this lesson you will learn the form of would, and you will also learn the many different uses and meanings. Past habits, past refusals, future relative to the past, indirect speech, polite offers and requests, conditionals, and past unreal situations. So let's look at all of this in detail. So let's start with the form. The affirmative form. So the full form is the subject, followed by would, followed by the base form of the verb. Example, I would like. So I is the subject, then we have would, and then we have the base form of the verb, which never changes. So would plus the base form is the same for all of them. So we have I would like, you would like, he would like, she would like, it would like, we would like, you would like, they would like. Very easy. And the contracted form is the subject followed by apostrophe D followed by the base form. So it's a very small change. So here is the pronunciation. I'd like, you'd like, he'd like, she'd like, it'd like, we'd like, you'd like, and they'd like. Would in the negative form. So the full form is the subject followed by would not followed by the base form of the verb. So this part doesn't change. It is always would not plus the base form. And here we are using like as an example. I would not like, you would not like, he would not like, she would not like, it would not like, we would not like, you would not like, and they would not like. And in the contracted form, we have the subject followed by wouldn't. That's an N apostrophe T followed by the base form. And here we are. I wouldn't like, you wouldn't like, he wouldn't like, she wouldn't like, it wouldn't like, we wouldn't like, you wouldn't like, they wouldn't like. And finally, the question form. Would plus the subject plus the base form, then the rest of the sentence or the rest of the question, and then when we write it, we write a question mark. So, would I like, would you like, would he like, would she like, would it like, would we like, would you like, would they like. Okay, so that's the form. Now let's look at the meaning and the use. Past habits. So we use would to describe a regular activity or habit in the past. So this is very important. This is only in the past. Example. When Jane was at university, she would study for 3 hours every evening. So notice this is an action in the past because we have was at university. So she would study. This means that she studied regularly in the past for 3 hours every evening. Okay, so we use would plus obviously the base form to describe a regular activity in the past. Another example. When my grandma came to visit, we would play cards every day. We would play cards every day. And again, this is an action in the past. Okay? Past refusals. We use would to describe a refusal from the past. And a refusal is the act of not wanting to do something, or the act of not agreeing to do something. And this use is usually in the negative form. So we use the negative form of would. Example. Jane was angry. She wouldn't speak to me. She wouldn't speak to me. So Jane was, so we know that this is in the past. She wouldn't speak to me means that she refused to speak to me. Sarah says, "Why are you late?" And Mark replies, "My car wouldn't start." So this means my car refused to start. Okay, so in other words, his car broke down. Okay, so this is very common when we talk about our car that in the past, if it doesn't start in the past. My car wouldn't start. Now, this is a little bit more complicated. A future relative to the past. Well, we use would to describe an action that is in the future relative to an older action in the past. Okay, so there are two actions in the past. One first action in the past, and then an action after it. That is the action that is future relative to the other task, to the other action, and that is where we use would. So would is therefore a past form of will. Let me give you an example. So first of all, let's look at a normal future, the normal future tense, because I'm sure you all know this. So this is the future relative to the present. So the future compared to the present. So Mark says, "I think that I will pass the exam." Okay, so this is what we call like the normal future, the future simple. So we have an action in the present, I think, in the present, and the future is future relative to the present, that I will pass the exam. So the exam is in the future. It's not today, it may be next week, for example. So the future will is relative to the present. Okay, so we use will for this. We always use will. So I'm sure you know this already. So here is a diagram. So for example, this is the present, this is the time, this is time. So this is present, this line is the present. So today is Saturday. So on the left, this is the past. And on the right, this is the future. So this sentence is I think in the present and will pass the exam in the future. Okay, so this diagram describes this action, this sentence. Now let's look at the more complicated one. So now let's look at the future relative to the past. So what does this mean? Well, imagine this situation. Imagine now we are several days pass. Okay, so imagine that we are now Thursday. imagine now we want to describe the situation here on Thursday after the exam. So the present is now here. And we say, and we're talking about here. So we could say, last week I thought that I would pass the exam. Okay, so now the present is here. And we are talking about this in the past and this in the past. But this is now in the future relative to this. So here, now we have the present is now Thursday, here. Okay, so it's after the exam. And we have the past and the future. Okay, so the exam is now in the past. So we have the exam here. And this is when I thought. So Saturday. So here. So we think. And so this, the exam here, is past the exam. This is in the future relative to another past action. Okay, which is I thought. Okay, so I thought that I would pass I would pass the exam. So although this is in the past, it is in the past relative to the present, but it is in the future relative to this past. Okay, so we're just moving the time slightly to the left. Okay, hope that's clear. So would here is yes, it's like a past form of will. Okay, so it's future relative to the past, compared to the past. So would pass the exam is future compared to the first action. Okay, let's look at two more examples. So future relative to present with will. So in the present, I know that I will see you again. But in the past, we can say, I knew that I would see you again. So knew is the past form of know, and I would see you again. So this is future relative to this past. So this happens after this. Another example, he's sure that I'll like his house. And here we're using the contracted form. So it's the contracted form of the verb to be, he's, which means he is. So I'll, which is the contracted form of will. He's sure that I'll like his house. And using would, so the future relative to the past, he was sure that I'd like his house. So was, past form of the verb to be, and I'd, the contracted form of would. I'd like his house. So this is future action or future state relative to an older past action or an older past state. Okay? Indirect speech. When we use indirect speech, we use would after past reporting verbs where will was used in direct speech. So, example. Here is some direct speech. Mark said, I will go to London. So we're reporting directly. This is the exact words that Mark said. So that is the definition of direct speech. We are quoting the exact words and we put them in quotation marks. Mark said, and this is a past reporting verb, Mark said, I will go to London. If we want to convert this to indirect speech, here is the answer. So this in indirect speech is Mark said that he would go to London. Mark said that he would go to London. Okay, so again, this is almost like a future relative to the past, again, because this is future, this is happening after this, after he said it. Okay, the intention to go to London is after it. Okay, example 2, in direct speech, Jane said, I will help you. If we convert it to indirect speech, we use this rule and we replace will with would. Jane said that she would help me. Jane said that she would help me. She would help me. Okay? Polite offers and requests. So we use would to make polite offers and requests. Example, would you like a glass of orange juice? So we're saying would to be polite. Okay, this is very common structure. Would you like something? Would you help me carry my bags? So this is a polite way of making a request. Would you help me carry my bags? So would is very common when we're trying to be polite. Conditionals. So we use would in conditionals to describe unreal situations. And we use them in the second conditional, which is an unreal situation in the present. If I had a car, I would drive to Paris. I would drive to Paris. Okay, so this is a conditional structure. And although this is a past tense, it is in fact happening in the present. And it's an unreal situation in the present. And the third conditional is an unreal situation in the past. If I had known her, I would have introduced you to her. Okay, so this is an unreal situation in the past, for which we use the past perfect. But there are very specific rules for this structure and for this structure. It's quite, it's a little bit complicated, and for more information, watch my videos about conditionals for more information. I have several videos which explain this and this in more detail. And the link to these videos is in the description of this video and at the end of this video. Okay? But just to understand that we use would in the second conditional and the third conditional. And finally, unreal situations in the past. So we use would to describe unreal situations in the past that are not conditionals. Okay, sometimes we have an unreal situation in the past, but they are not conditionals. They are not if statements. The form is would followed by have followed by the past participle. And have plus the past participle, this is called a perfect infinitive. So this is a perfect infinitive. Examples. Would have lived. Would have lived. So this describes an unreal situation in the past. Jane asks, "Why did you live in Manchester?" And Mark replies, "Well, I would have lived in London, but it was too expensive." So, since this is an unreal situation in the past, this means that Mark, in fact, did not live in London. He lived in Manchester, and this is the reason. Okay, so he didn't live in London. So it's an unreal situation in the past. And this is the form. Would have lived. Would have plus the past participle. Another example would be would have studied. I would have studied law, but I chose medicine instead. I chose medicine instead. Okay, so it's unreal situation in the past. So this means, in fact, I did not study law. I studied medicine. So we use would plus have studied to describe this unreal situation in the past. We're explaining why we didn't do something, okay? But it's not a conditional because there's no if here, okay? So this is why I've discussed it separately, okay? So those are the most common situations where we use would. There are a few others, but these were the most common, okay? So there we are. That's the end of the lesson. Hope you enjoyed it, and here are some other videos which I recommend you watch.